Welcome to Power Hour, where the editors of Power Sports Business interview the movers and shakers of the power sports industry. Okay, welcome everybody. I'm Brendan with PSB, and we're here with Power Hour with Andy Leisner, who has been an industry stalwart for many years. He's a former publisher of Cycle World, an MIC board member, also a racer and go fast guy. But he more recently has helped out with electric motorcycle companies such as Vulcan and Roar. And we're gonna talk about kind of the future of electric motorcycles and the e-mobility side of things of the power sports market. So welcome, Andy. I'm glad you could join us today. Did I get all that right? You're an
Yeah,
MIC board member,
yeah,
former
yeah,
board member, and
yeah.
racer. What did you race again? I know I see some of the stuff in the background. I know you were looks like a road racer, and pardon me if I don't know all of your racing background, but I'd
Yeah.
like to hear a little bit.
Yeah, thanks, Brendan. I grew up in Southern California, and I was as started about age 6. I was riding motocross, and I raced motocross from about age 10 to 16 in Southern California. Great time, obviously, to be in the world of
Oh
motocross. It was blowing up then.
my God.
Um, and then I decided to try road racing, and I did much better road racing than I did at motocross, and ended up racing 3 years in the AMA 250 GP National Championships, and then 1 year in the 250 World Championships before a
Wow.
big nasty career-ending injury took me out of there. And I decided that from that point forward, I finished. I was going to UCLA at the time, and I finished up school and decided I wanted to work in the motorcycle industry for the rest of my life.
And you decided right then that's your life. Well, after you did probably take a big hit to the head when you crashed at one point in your motorcycle career. So,
I took a
just
couple of
like a
those.
lot of
Yeah,
us,
yeah,
but hey, it's here we are, you're a survivor and the industry's surviving and
yeah,
we're moving forward and sometimes thriving, sometimes struggling, but we're here,
yeah.
and
It
I
was
think
it
that's
was
what's
it was a really neat time, back then, and it still is now. I've seen that our industry go through a lot of changes, and but at that point in time, a gentleman who just recently passed away, who I owe a lot to, a gentleman named Ken Boyko, sort of took me under his wing and sort of helped me get into the industry and did a lot for me. He was actually sponsored me. He was a DG and sponsored me when I was racing motocross, and he
oh
and he um he helped me get into the
my God.
industry, and I owe pretty much, my career to what Ken did. There's a number of people that have been really influential in my position here in the motorcycle industry, and appreciate very much Jim Hansen, Larry Little. It's
Yeah.
I've really I've had some
And
great
then you
mentors.
you go to UCLA, you end up in the motorcycle industry,
Mhm.
you somehow go to Cycle World, end up as publisher Cycle World for, what time frame was that
Yeah, yeah. So it
in
was
that?
it was the late 90s. I was just an ad manager for Cycle World, and loved it there, but had some opportunity. I had an opportunity to go be a vice president for AMA Pro Racing. This is back in the time when we were a for-profit subsidiary of the AMA, and
Oh,
it was a really fun time. We developed that sport into a really profitable operation, a lot of really big sponsors. And then I was asked to go join Mazda Raceway Laguna Seca in 2005, to late 2004, to go there and help bring the MotoGP event back to the United States, into Laguna Seca. So I was really honored to be a part of a great team that brought that race back. And then the parent company for Cycle World called me up and said, "Hey, we'd like you to come back and be publisher." And so, of course, at that time, world's largest motorcycle magazine, just a powerhouse in the industry. I couldn't say no. So I
oh,
ended up back at Cycle World. We were then purchased by another media company called Bonnier, and then we went about building this network of power sports media brands. We grew it to I believe 13 brands: Cycle World Motorcyclist, Sport Rider, Dirt Rider,
yeah,
ATV Rider, UTV Driver, Hot Bike Baggers,
hot
Street
bike,
Chopper,
yeah.
uh, I'm missing a couple, but that was a fantastic operation. So we basically that was through the 2010 to about 2020, and sort of lived through that big media transition from print to digital to programmatic to paid social. Each one of
Oh,
the and
you
each one of
lived
those
it.
steps were a were a punch to the face, of traditional media. So it was an interesting run. It was a great time. We had great people, great brands, produced really great content. The type of content that was produced back then just doesn't get it doesn't get produced like that
Just as
anymore. So
amazing.
yeah,
Yeah, and the landscape. We could go into a whole separate pod just on that. Because you've lived that as far as like the changing landscape and media, and
yeah,
especially on the enthusiast media, and even it's affected trade pubs everywhere
yeah.
all down the line. We're all fighting for our lives in some way or another, but you
Mhm.
got to find a niche and kind of hang on by your fingernails and
Yeah.
and
It's
keep moving forward.
we could do a whole nother podcast on on
Exactly.
how motorcycle companies and dealers can reach their customers now, and it's become more difficult and more challenging, and you reach them in different ways. I always say eyes, heart, wallet. You have to get the eyes. You have to win their hearts, and then you have to get them to open their wallet, and it's challenging to do so
Especially all
in
three of
today's
those.
media
Yeah.
landscape. And to be honest, there are only a couple OEMs that are really doing it right now. The majority of them are still trying to operate like it's 2018, and
Yeah.
it's not 2018. The media has evolved and substantially since 2018, but most of the OEMs are still trying to just use the same old playbook, and I think they could do better.
It's changing quick, and I think with the COVID and, again, moving into our topic really today is just, your experience on your evolution of coming from the gas side into the electric
Yeah.
side and EV powered side of power sports industry. And what have you seen, because that's changing as rapidly as media, probably
Yeah.
more so even.
Yeah. My first taste of this was in 2008. I did a little bit of consulting for electric motorcycle maker Bramo, which ended up becoming got acquired by Victory, part of the
Right.
Polaris
Okay.
world. But at the time, it was a standalone startup. There was a gentleman there who's now at Zero. I believe he's the VP of design, product design and engineering, Brian Wisman. He's probably one of the most intelligent people in the electric motorcycle world. And he got me sort of really hooked on the potential for electric motorcycles. And I had the opportunity to become the CEO of Vulcan e-Power Sports back in 2020. We produced an electric, a utility and fun off-road motorcycle, an electric UTV, and an e-bike. And then I got the opportunity to be the CEO of the lightweight e-moto company. The e-moto is that segment we call that's sort of the Suron product. It's not an e-bike, but it's not a full-size motorcycle.
Right.
That's the e-moto segment. So I got to
That's
be
a
the
really growing segment, I think. I
it
mean,
is
there's some.
it's a huge segment. It's a massive segment. It's 100,000 units per year here in the United States. And
Wow.
I always preach the reason why that opportunity seems so great for me is I just want to see the motorcycle industry grow. I want to see more people riding motorcycles. And here we had all these kids, teenagers, riding, powered two-wheel vehicles, essentially small, lightweight motorcycles,
With throttles.
with throttles. Yep, going into power sports dealers, buying a Fox helmet and some moto gloves and maybe even an enduro jacket and unfortunately how they ride them is not necessarily responsible or legal. But here, we've got
Yeah.
100,000 new people on motorcycles, and it's shame on us if we can't convert those young teenage e-moto riders into full-fledged motorcyclists, in the future.
I mean, I think that's a prime, those are like prime targets of who can be the, the customer of the future. And I think e-bikes, I've talked to some other SoCal-based industry people who are all talking about the e-bike industry out there in California. Really dirt bikes, those
Yeah,
e-motos are like the perfect kind of setup. But there's
yeah,
also a ton of other e-bikes, guys just out there commuting
yeah,
on things that, could potentially lead to bigger bike purchases and whether
yeah.
it's gas or electric.
Yeah, it's it, the even the pedal e-bikes like you say, that's a perfect entry point into, powered two-wheel, in transit and fun and as an industry, we really need to look at these folks and look at growing them into becoming motorcycles. And that's where I think that's one of the segments where we can talk about the problems with the electric motorcycle industry, and there are a lot of them. But I think that's one of the segments in the future that we need to have ready and waiting for these kids, because these are kids that don't use clutches and
Right.
really don't want to use clutches, and don't really
They
want to
don't
shift
drive
gears.
cars with
Yeah,
clutches. No, nobody's
yeah.
learning to do this stuff anymore. It's
So,
an old man's thing now,
yep.
to clutch and drive a stick shift or to, work the hand clutches and
Yeah.
whatever. So,
So
um,
we've got to be ready for them because they're coming, and they're one of the best opportunities we have to grow motorcycling that we've seen since mini bikes in the 70s.
yeah. So what made you, I mean, now how would you, you are probably like me in that you bled gasoline in your veins, you were a real, wanted but how has that, changed you with your work in the electric industry as far as like, you know, do you see, I mean, I think we all see the future as
Yeah.
being electric, but how do you make that transition and I guess what I'm clawing at, reaching at
Yeah.
is how are dealers going to talk to some of these gas powered
Yeah.
guys and get them
Yeah.
interested in electric, without them maybe already saying, oh, yeah, I'll go electric.
Yeah. The problem, one of the big problems is with electric, is that the industry, tried to make electric equivalents of successful gas products, sport bikes, adventure bikes. That's electric does not work well in that application right now with the current battery technology and the battery chemistry we have. It just to make something that you can go touring on, or you can go, ride fast for long periods of time. Battery technology just isn't at the point to do so. And a lot of people ask, well, you can go out and buy an electric sports car right now that runs circles around a gas powered sports car. Why can't we do this with motorcycles? And motorcycles are very unique in that they have a horrible amount of drag. A Tesla Model 3 has a 0.27 coefficient of drag. Your
Okay.
average motorcycle has a zero point 0.7 coefficient of drag. That rider sitting on a motorcycle is three times less aerodynamic than the car next to him going down the freeway. And what
So you
that
got all
does,
that pushing against them.
yeah, and the ability, the power required for that wind resistance increases with a cube of speed. So, if it only takes if you only need 500, say 500 watts to go 25 miles an hour, you need 4,000 watts to go 50 miles an hour. You need the 13,000 watts to go 75 miles an hour. So, you get out on that's why, the around town ranges for electric motorcycles are really good. But then you get
Yeah.
and you go 75 miles an hour, and you can only go 80 miles, and you've eaten up the battery. So that's a result of the battery technology not being where it needs to be as far as battery density, battery capacity, and then charging speeds. But the good news is that we're only about 3 to 5 years away from that completely changing as a result of solid state batteries. And dealers should be aware of this, that in probably 3 to 5 years, with solid state batteries that are cheaper, hold more charge faster, we'll see electric equivalent motorcycles that can outperform gas motorcycles from a power and range perspective and cost a lot less. So
I
we're not
mean,
there yet, but that is on the horizon and it's coming.
one of the things too, because of motorcycles and power sports, you're really limited with packaging of a battery, so that's another limiting factor. But once you get that power, the power density, the weight, the range, price, probably the big thing. I think when prices come down, you're going to
Yeah.
have a lot more people going, yeah, I'll give that a shot.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. And
get
that,
more
the
people.
cost per kilowatt hour is 1/10 of what it was just a few years ago. That cost is
That's
plummeting.
crazy.
But the again the big change will be actual battery chemistry, different anode and cathode materials, and solid state batteries. We'll end up with solid state batteries. Mercedes next year will have a car with one of the first cars here in America with a solid state battery. And solid state batteries are just that. They don't use that electrolyte that is, notoriously flammable. Solid
Right.
state batteries won't have the same thermal runaway issues. And again, cheaper,
So
lighter,
solid
more
state,
power.
a lot of your phones use a solid state type, or
Yeah,
your
yeah,
laptop and stuff
yeah,
uses,
yeah.
some of that solid state type technology, I guess. But
Yeah, and
so
the voltage requirements from an electric car, an electric motor are much much higher. So it's
oh,
not easy to sort of switch the technology over to a big high voltage 500-volt power plant. But it's coming, and there's a ton of capital being poured into these battery companies that are developing this new technology, and
you know,
one of the other concerns is lithium mining, lithium supply. Will a lot of these new battery technologies coming will not use lithium, and they'll use very common, easily accessible materials.
I've heard a lot now that they're the US is they're looking at different types of minerals and materials to use besides your real high end. Lithium is
Yeah,
kind of China, don't they kind of have
yeah,
they've got like the massive quantities of it, and they kind of have the controlling share of it. I don't know. I think
yeah,
Canada's got quite a bit as well, and probably some other areas, but
yeah,
there are other ways to make batteries that are being developed and that can give as good a results, or at least make as close a results and keep the price down. I mean, the price is
yeah,
big. Not
yeah,
not destroying digging giant holes everywhere is probably going to be a big thing, but
yeah.
we've also dug a lot of stuff to get oil.
True.
So,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
you know,
The technology on the horizon. We're in really early days of electric power plants, whether it's cars or motorcycles.
yeah.
We're in just the infancy of this evolution, and what the capabilities are, and they're not far away. And as far as again, energy density, weight, cost, the ability to charge quickly, we're really close there. So that tech is going to come to our industry, and when it does, it will be. I think it'll be pretty transformative. It's riding electric motorcycles is a different experience, but it's a really wonderful experience. I love it just because. I always tell people it distills motorcycling down to like its purest form, because you don't have vibration, you don't have
Yeah.
sound, you don't have smell, it's so smooth, so much torque, more torque than you could you've ever experienced on a gas motorcycle. And on a tight, twisty road, on an electric motorcycle, with just, just hearing the wind, hearing the pad squeeze the rotors, and flicking it back and forth and grabbing handfuls of torque. It's a really, really it's
You
a really,
probably
really
hear
great
tire noise a lot more. You hear all these other things that you're not used to hearing, and
suspension. Yeah, no one realizes how.
suspension noise,
Yeah,
what's
yeah,
that noise,
yeah. It's no one really. We didn't know how much noise suspension makes until we didn't have an engine
Right.
again. Yeah.
And no one ever really tried to cover it up or make it quieter until you had to hear it all the time. I think one of the things you meant being early days is just the fact that, if you look at even early days of the auto industry, how many car makers were there in the beginning? There were car makers dotted all over
Yeah.
the Midwest in Ohio, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and all over the place that are no longer.
Yeah. Motorcycle
Some
companies
of them
too.
have turned into suppliers and different things, but I think we're seeing some of the fallout with some of these EV, especially on
Yeah.
the e motorcycle side of them falling away. With we were just talking about Energica. Is it
Yeah.
Energica? Energica just filing for bankruptcy. There's been others. Fuel was
Yep.
another big one with Eric Buell, who founded it. I don't know how much he had control, but he was involved with that. And
Yeah.
there's been a numerous e-bicycle type,
Yeah.
like Sondors is another one you were talking about,
Yeah.
Cake, couple others, and so where do you think this all shakes out?
Yeah. It's first of all, I have the utmost respect for those companies that jumped in and didn't make it, because again, they were looking forward. I think that the tech wasn't there. The costs and the technology are not quite there yet for what they were trying to do. Energica was trying to build, big, fast sport bikes and touring, and adventure bikes and street fighters. It's not there yet. Those are great motorcycles, really fun to ride, beautiful, very expensive, but they were wonderful. The product was good, but just it didn't have parity with gas
And they
engine
also
vehicles.
require a lot of cubic dollars to keep them, to fund them, and to get them
Yeah,
off the
yeah,
ground. They're
yeah,
they're like startup tech companies in a
yeah,
way
exactly.
because of,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
are
But
doing okay.
Yeah, and where the bright spot is, and I think it's what the smart companies will do with our market here in America is I think the shining star of this right now is India. And in India, India sells tens of millions of motorcycles a year. They're going to sell 1.2 million electric motorcycles and scooters in 2024, which is a mind-blowing number. We
Well, the
would we
government has stepped in to help with that,
They
though,
have,
right?
yes.
Yeah.
They have. Those subsidies, though, have now expired, yet there's still
Okay.
heavy, heavy investment in production of motorcycles and scooters, mostly scooters in this segment. And these are different. These are different than what the other companies we just talked about are trying to do. They're small, they're lightweight. They use maybe a 2 to 4 kilowatt battery, not a big, 14 to 20 kilowatt battery. They
I know they.
they're not that fast. They're 75, 75 to 100 kilometers per hour. They're made for urban commuting.
They even have electric tuk-tuks,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
I've
yeah,
I've heard that the government will help fund if you convert a tuk-tuk, because they've got conversion deals where they put basically like a golf cart
yeah.
battery set up and change it over to a electric. But I mean, they have a lot of unregulated carbureted type smog producing,
Yes, yeah, yeah.
so they've got a bigger problem
Yeah,
and
they're on a
than
mission. A small two-stroke motorcycle, produces 100
I
times the
love two
emissions of a
stroke.
modern car with a catalytic converter. Unfortunately, I grew up riding a
I just
two-stroke,
want
so
racing two
um,
stroke, and just pump that into my room every morning. I'll wake up and be like, woohoo, I'm ready to go. you know.
I know it's a
Yeah.
it's a smell that I smell. sort of
such
the
a
antithesis of electric, the way the power is delivered and the
yeah,
way that
exactly. I
the way
just
that it treats the atmosphere, the environment. But I love that was my whole background was True Strokes. But in India, there's a couple companies, and the best of which right now, the most successful of which is a company called Ultraviolet. They're looking to come to America. They produce what is essentially a 300 to 400 cc sport bike equivalent, like a Ninja 400 or an
yeah,
R3 type of motorcycle. They're really they produce about the same amount of power. They have a 10 kilowatt battery. They can go 130 plus miles, without recharging, fast recharging
it's not
speeds.
bad range.
Um, and they cost $3,500. So
That's
with
unbelievable.
modern suspension, chassis technology, and that's a segment that's pretty strong here in America, and no one is riding a Yamaha R3 across the country on a tour. It's mostly used for
No.
urban transit and fun. And so
Well,
I think that's a great place for electric here right now, and I think
it's a
that's
good
eventually going to.
size, a good entry point. I think you're right. I mean, I think Can-Am, that's kind of what they were aiming
Yeah.
with that Pulse and the Origin. I don't think their range is as good, but I think it'll get better as they evolve that segment in their electric you know, lineup, I guess. But that's, I think, a really good sweet spot for electric, kind of something that's sporty enough, but urban. That's a real
Yes.
motorcycle, not
Yeah.
a,
Yeah.
not a e-bike, not something with
Yeah.
pedals on it,
Yeah.
or,
Yeah.
that I think that is light and maneuver, it's got maneuverability big enough for big guys to fit
Yeah.
on it, you know.
Yeah.
Um,
I
I
think
mean, sign me up.
that's the best spot right now. So for someone who's young, who's looking to wants to ride a motorcycle, but just sort of needs it to ride around town and maybe to school, and has never used a clutch before and is not really interested in learning how to use a clutch, and can buy an electric equivalent of a 300 cc or 400 cc motorcycle for $2,000 less than the gas bike.
Yeah.
I think that's where the market it sort of fits best with America right now, and off-road as well. The costs are still a
Yeah.
little high, but there's a lot of really good electric off-road bikes here or coming. The Stark Varg is just an amazing, amazing, amazing motorcycle.
I
Um,
mean, that everything I've heard about that bike sounds amazing. Now, I thought they were going to try to do a MXGP class for a Stark Varg.
yeah, for electric.
Um,
Yeah, they just want to race against gas
or at
bikes.
least yeah,
They
I know they do, and they
yeah.
probably would have, thing is, yeah, I don't know that the other people, because they'll have the advantage off that,
Yeah.
maybe not for a
Yeah.
long, they'll probably run out of juice at the end, but uh, you know, I think that for sure, as far as torque and getting off the line and all that,
Yeah.
it would be way better.
Yeah, 80 horsepower
So
and
yeah, I
just
mean, I don't know how
lots of
much
torque.
lighter they are, but
Just
yeah,
a,
Gods of Torque. Now there's another one. Dust Moto has one
yeah,
that that
yeah,
they've been working on, and I talked to those guys. It seems like, and they're not really geared towards sport. It's more towards leisure and trail
yeah.
riding and all that kind
I
of
really
stuff.
like
But
what they're doing. Colin and his team, I think, are addressing a really good spot, and that's sort of like the CRF 250F, world,
yes,
or the old TTR 230s, or TTR 250s. There's an enormously high volume of motorcycles there, and it's those are the entry point to motorcycling for a lot of people. And
yep,
we used to go out to Jawbone Canyon, ride dirt bikes with my family a lot, and you would just see a campsite set up with one UTV, and then probably two or three 230s, or 250Fs, sitting
yeah,
around. So I think it's actually even superior to those bikes. But as far as ease of use, it's an easier bike to learn how to ride than a typical 230 or 250.
yeah, yeah. and you also helped with Volcon with their that Stag, the
Mhm.
building that big UTV, which had a GM battery plant, power plant, electric power plant with it. I got to drive the mule, one
Oh
of the
yeah,
mules, which was pretty
yeah,
cool. So, but it was big. That thing was a monster. Everything
yeah,
about it was big because they
yeah.
had all that torque. I'd like to see something a little more scaled down, which maybe they're
Yeah,
already working on, but
they are working on that right now. The Vulcan guys have continued to evolve that. The Stag is sort of their flagship, and it's sort of their Corvette of their lineup because
yeah,
and the drivetrain on the powertrain on it is essentially a Chevy Bolt, and which
right.
is a really proven platform. But it made
Makes me want to try a Bolt.
so much power, so much torque, that just ate it. They had to completely redesign, the half shafts and all the traditional, suspension componentry on a traditional UTV because it was so fast and produced
It
so much
was
torque.
just twisting
Yeah,
them. And
yeah,
yeah, you could just snap them. But, so I think that this segment is growing, 3 to 5. The interesting thing is we did earlier this year, I can't remember, don't quote me on which month, but it was earlier in the year, probably Q1. We did a study. We did sent out a survey asking dealers what they thought about electric and when they thought thing, and they're right around that 3, 5 year range. Some a little
yeah.
bit longer, but most people see that kind of like you. They're like not thinking the technology's ready yet, but it's
No,
and I think the other thing is demand. You can't force people to buy stuff if they're not
no.
ready to buy it.
No,
That's
no.
the
And
other
I
big
think
part.
the industry originally started focusing on our core customer, the 50-year-old with, a lot of discretionary income that wanted a really good adventure bike or a good sport bike. The electric needs to be focused at a different audience. And again, it's these kids that are coming off riding Surons and that sort of or a Super 73 and
Yeah.
want to get into motorcycling. So that's where the industry needs to focus, and it just so happens that the electric product, is a little better suited to those platforms anyway.
Yeah.
Right now everybody's a little scared because of the recent big, high profile, it's not in Energica because it's a case, it's not technically a bankruptcy, it's a liquidation, but
Liquidation.
there's and I do a lot with capital formation. I help companies raise capital, and the access to capital right now for electric vehicles is limited. But
Yeah, there's the spigot's been turned really, really. Yeah, it's like
yeah,
drip, drip.
yeah, it was a lot different in 2020
Whereas
when
before it was flowing. Like, I
yeah,
mean, it was, and coming from the automotive side before this, and I've kind of worked on both sides of the aisle in a lot of ways in my career. But I was telling somebody, that was, pretty big in the industry, like they're like, oh, well, I don't see electric car. This was a couple years ago. I don't see electric cars coming for a while. I'm like, follow the money. I'm like, look at the money, look at all the money they're spending. But, look what happened too.
yeah,
They
yeah,
spent all this money and now they've had to you can't force demand on people.
yeah, yeah,
You can't
yeah.
force them to switch.
I think the cars have hit that point right now where, you can an electric Chevy Silverado and a Ford F-150 is exactly the same place as the gas equivalent. And
Okay.
so that's sort of that in 2026 or 2025 it will be. I think that's like that tipping point, and that will now start going as battery costs go down every single year. So, in probably 2026, 2027, you'll be able to buy an electric Ford F-150 for less than a gas powered Ford F-150. So I think that's the point
That
at
could be
which, yeah,
interesting. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
And I
But
think, the same happens with
mhm,
bikes. I mean, are you going to go like, well, I could get, a pretty cool electric bike and for less money. And yeah, I'm not going to ride it across country, but maybe that infrastructure, once that's all built out, I mean, I know you can. I mean, I've
yeah,
been to, when I was at the Harley Homecoming, last year, the, whatever the big one was, the 1/10th
mhm,
homecoming.
mhm,
I talked to a guy who had a live wire there, and it was
yeah.
all toured out, kitted out with all his
Oh,
bags. And he's like, he rode it across country.
Yeah.
several, and he, just stopped along, went to Tesla charging
Yeah.
places or wherever, or went to Harley, fast charge, could charge it up quickly,
Yeah.
and he had no problems with
Yeah.
riding it that way. But not everyone's gonna be there yet. I
Yeah.
think it'll come.
It's a different world, and we'll always have early adopters who like want to try, so I
Yeah.
we drive electric cars, and so we've driven long, multi-state trips in them,
Okay.
and it's a different experience.
Yeah.
It's fun. I enjoy it. I think it's fun, sort of
You can't
strategically
just
mapping
look
out
at
our
the interstate
charging.
and pull off at
Yeah,
your local sheets and go,
yeah,
let's pull
yeah.
off and get a couple of,
Although
nachos and
ironically, Sheets Sheets is one of the best places to find charging. They have a lot of
oh, really? Okay.
yeah, Sheets has got a lot of charging centers there. So, but it's a different experience. You have a lot of early adopters that want to do it, but again, we got to remember we've got kids that have never put gas in a car. They've never pushed a clutch pedal. They've never put gas in
Right.
a car, but they've zipped around their neighborhood, on a Suron. And
And
so
playing
this,
video games,
yeah,
I think I honestly it comes out of, they play a lot of them played the video games and done iRacing and done,
yeah,
motorcycle, the motocross games and stuff where you're essentially in an electric environment at that point, you're
yeah,
just twisting the throttle and go. And I think that kind of thing will translate directly to these electric motorcycles, especially, when you have some of the software interfaces, those touch screens, all those fancy little things that go along with electric, which is pretty cool too. Um, that's
yeah.
another thing that adds to the experience, the
Yeah,
that
yeah.
rider experience.
I have a zero SRF, and yeah, the app, working with the app is super fun, tuning the bike, tuning the torque and the
Okay.
regen and the speeds and everything. It's a
You can do
whole
all that
nother.
from the app then?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Wow.
Design your own sort of, power maps and such. It's fun to do. But again, some people like to throw a Lego or something, turn the key and thumb the starter button, have a V-twin come to life, and that's all they're looking for. So I'm,
Yeah.
we shouldn't try to convert everybody to electric. I don't think that we need to do that. I just think that
Yeah.
from an industry standpoint, OEMs, dealers, is just be prepared, and we have to be careful, because there are companies in India that have the product already, that want to come here and steal a big chunk of
Yeah,
our market.
the one you mentioned, I've read about, and I also think some of the bigger, Hero could easily, they're a big player over there, and
Yeah,
I know
very.
they've got some,
Yeah,
you
they're the
know,
biggest, some of the biggest motorcycle companies in the world, and they're extremely well funded, and yeah, if they wanted to come here and take a chunk out of our market with a new product, they could do that. Yeah.
one last thing before we go. What do you think about any of the battery swapping stuff? Like
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
Gogoros, and I know
Yeah.
like there's some like in Japan they've gotten some of the big groups together. Kimco has their thing. Do you think that could be anything here that would go, or is that more just kind of like a maybe more on the scooter or e-mobility
Yeah,
type
yeah,
level?
exactly. Yeah, I was talking recently to a company in Spain, Silent Scooters, and they have a really neat battery swapping program. I don't think that will ever go beyond, really densely populated urban city centers. It's wonderful, like the GoGo system, where you basically pull up to a center, pop open your seat, pull out your battery, slide into the charger, pull a new one out, drop it in. That's
So
fantastic.
like
But
the subscription system, or you
yeah,
got an app and
exactly.
you're just going,
But you know how, Brendan, big this country is, and
yeah.
how difficult it will be building that network out here. Oof, it's
Well, when I was in Taiwan talking to
mhm,
some of the Gogoro guys, and what their theory is that there are going to be mega cities, which there already are, but
mhm,
mega cities, Hey, Mexico City for one.
Yeah,
What, 22 million people,
yeah,
Tokyo,
yeah,
probably Singapore, all these mega densely super high populated air, New York City and other that they feel like some of those battery swapping things can be really
yeah,
successful and those types of, but there's only going to be what, I mean, I'm sure those will grow. They'll be bigger, even bigger in the future, but we're also talking about there's places like London that are going to ban gas vehicles
yes,
in the city
yeah,
center and things
yeah,
like that. So you're going to have some kind of,
yeah,
you know otherwise
yeah.
taking the train everywhere.
Yeah, yeah. I would love to see that. I think it's a great, from an urban transport, perspective, like around town. I used to have a Vespa GTS 300 Super Tech, which,
Oh, nice.
anything less than 20 miles, I just jumped on my Vespa and went, and I loved it. And then
I've
now I
got
have
a
a,
scooter
I,
too that I love just doing that quick around town
yep.
stuff, grocery. I got over feeling like a dork on it once the smile factor was way more than worrying about my cool
And
factor.
so now my urban commuter is a cargo bike, electric cargo bike, and
Oh, okay.
yeah, and
Nice.
that's almost as much fun. Not quite as much, but almost as much fun. So,
Yeah.
um,
And you can load up on your grocery. I've actually thought about the cargo bike thing too. So I'm always look. Most of where I am, I'm in a area where I don't really travel outside of like 6, 10 square miles.
yeah, perfect.
So
Yeah,
it's like
yeah,
perfect for that kind of thing. Except for the weather, we get winter here, we get
that's
snow.
right. That's
So
right.
but other than that. But well, hey man, this has been great chatting with you. I feel like we could just keep going on and on
Yeah,
here
yeah,
with
yeah. Thanks,
with
thanks for the
more, but
opportunity to talk about it. Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Again,
we'll
I
have
just
to pick up on another because there are definitely some more topics I'd like to talk to you about in the future, but I think this is a good primer on where electric could be going and should be going in the next, three,
yeah,
5 years. And if you look back, okay, what, 2019, you look back 5 years, 2018, 2019, somewhere in there where electric was then, where it is now, and it's already made pretty big progress in a lot of ways, especially with the technology aspect. I think the bigger issue is trying to just and it's going to be like you said, I feel like it's just going to be the kids that are going to come in and want this stuff more than guys my age that have been gas junkies. They'll be converts. I would be a convert. I'll
yeah.
ride anything.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest message that I put to dealers is that, don't, you'll be able to convert some gas riders to electric, because again, there's always the early adopters who want to try something new, but leverage electric, the product that we'll see coming, if we don't see it coming from the Japanese OEMs or others, people like Can-Am or some of the Indian companies are going to have product here that will be perfectly suited to young consumers who want to
Hmm.
be on two wheels, but maybe not necessarily on a gas product.
Right. And they'll make it look cool. And then once they do, they're gonna have it's gonna be a whole thing where, who would have thought like, when I was growing up that phones would have been this whole thing.
Yeah.
Smartphones. You know what I mean? Like I never thought about that. It was never even like phones. I don't even want to, it's got a cord or whatever you had. It just, yeah, now and it's like now these kids are all glued into everything, so I think that we just have to be open to what's coming down the road,
Yeah.
and try
Yeah.
to go with it,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and to
It's
convert those you can.
Yeah,
So
it's not an either or. It's not electric
no.
trying to take over our industry. It's not, it's just you just have to recognize it as another revenue channel for the industry, another revenue channel for dealers, new customers for dealers. And again, not quite right now. We're not really quite there yet, but 3 to 5 years, it's gonna the electric
And
vehicle
that's where
landscape's gonna
right
look
around
different.
where California wants to have they want like 10%, I think somewhere in that they're
Yeah,
looking to have 10% of motorcycle sales out there, something like that,
yeah.
to be electric.
Yep.
I don't know how they're gonna necessarily do that. I don't know,
Yeah,
but
it's
at the same time,
and that's
if it's
one
a good
thing,
product,
I've worked with some manufacturers on a strategy for ZEM credits, so zero emission, motorcycle
yeah.
credits with the California Air Resources Board. It is coming, and Tesla, it's a $1.8 billion line item for Tesla right now, just selling zero emission vehicle credits to the manufacturers that aren't compliant.
Huh.
They
So
make
that's they're
$1.8 billion a year. Now, obviously, we're not going to have the volume's not going to be there for a motorcycle company to make $1.8 billion a year. But the companies that are selling a lot of electric motorcycles in California right now, Zero in particular, Livewire, they're going to be able to sell those ZEM credits back to the non-electric companies, and that will be a significant revenue channel for them.
And I think with Livewire probably come if they come out with another step, kind of intro to the intro. They've got what
Mhm.
the Del Mar 2 or whatever it is,
Yeah.
15 grand. They have that, or if that
Yeah.
Del Mar becomes like, under 10
Yeah.
at some point, maybe with
Yeah.
the credits, it's in there.
Yeah, there are a lot of smart people working on the Livewire project right now, and I'm sure we're going to see they know where the market's going. That Del Mar, I have to say, is a wonderful motorcycle. By the way, it's yes, the range is limited. It's just an urban motorcycle, but whew,
Yeah.
it is fun to ride. So yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I would like to try one out. I got to get to one of these next events and put a leg over it. So, but hey, great talking to you. So much information here that is going to be, I think people are going to be wanting to tune in for sure. So, really appreciate your time. Thank you for coming on.
Yeah, thanks,
And
Brendan.
what
Thanks
do
for
you
having
got
me. Yeah.
next? What are you working on next? Anything, any projects you want to
Yeah,
talk about here real quick?
just working with a couple motorcycle manufacturer, electric motorcycle manufacturers, one in India, and a an e-bike company, and then also helping a couple folks raise some capital for projects they're working on. It's I'm like like the industry, I'm trying to stay in the electric moto space, even though it's challenging right now with the product lineups that we have and such. That business is set to change drastically in 3 to 5 years, and I want to be a part of
Yeah.
that change.
That's awesome. Well, we look forward to checking in again to check on the progress of it all, and we'll be keeping an eye out, and hopefully we'll be talking to you way before then. So,
Awesome. Okay.
all right,
Thanks
have
very
a
much,
good one.
Brendan.
Thank you so
Okay.
much.
Okay. Bye bye.
And stop. Okay, no, that was great. I really appreciate it.
Sure, yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Again, there's so much animosity. I wanted to get the point across, like, don't think that it's
One or
election
the
versus
other.
gas. It's just like
I
let's
know, and
let's get
there's a
some of
lot of
the.
hate out there, especially, I know coming from the automotive side,
Oh,
anything
right.
mentioned with electric in it, you get
Yeah,
like booed out of the room practically.
yeah,
But,
yeah,
at the
yeah,
same time, I'm like, hey, it's not like electric doesn't have performance,
yeah,
and people, they know it. I
yeah,
think people are afraid of change. They don't want change.
yeah. I know, I know.
I
It's
like
tough.
the sound of an engine. I do. I
Yeah,
love it. I love the smell, whatever.
yeah,
But at the
and
same time, I'm willing to embrace whatever. Hey, once we go to like hydrogen, it's gonna be a whole nother
yeah,
thing.
yeah, yeah.
So
Yeah, it's from the performance perspective, I love that. I'm not a big Tesla fan, but that one little media stunt they did where they did a drag race between a Model S and a Porsche,
yeah, like
911 Carrera, but the Model S was towing a Porsche 911 on the back. So it was the Model S towing a Porsche versus the Porsche, and the Model S beat it. So
yeah. It's got so much that Model S Plaid. I mean,
oh
that Plaid model is just
yeah,
unbelievable once you hit that launch mode. But
face melting. Yeah,
yeah, which so they've gotten definitely some. they've got some you're not going to miss out on performance going to electric. We know
Yeah.
that. And I
Yeah.
think that's been proven over and over again. It's just it's getting past some of this early adopters, getting the technology there. Like you said, the timing's not quite right, but I think we're getting really
Yeah.
close.
Yeah. Yep.
So,
We will. It'll be and again, I don't try to convert people,
yeah.
but those
I,
that try it.
I could see, and I've talked to a lot of people in the past, even car guys will say, "Oh,
Mm.
I'll take an electric car as my daily, but I still want my muscle car in the garage, or I
Yeah,
want
yeah,
my,
yeah,
I want my road glider, my old antique, my vintage bike, or whatever.
yeah,
I
yeah,
still want all those things to tinker
yeah,
around with, maybe tool around, but I'm not going to go riding those. If I can, I'd rather have something that would be, if I could ride electric and it all worked for it, plug it in and don't have to worry about, going to gas stations and can just ride around with my, charging it at my house and everything, that would be amazing. I would love that.
yeah,
So, I think it's coming. It's just, and then, we're not the generation, like I said, it's going to be aimed at, our kids and grandkids and
yeah,
all that stuff that they're going to want it,
yeah, yeah,
That's the way I look at it. It's like, hey, I'm still a petrol head, and that's not going to change, but I'm still open to try other stuff. So,
yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yep. Same.
Anyway.
Well, thanks.
All
I really
right.
appreciate you
Thank you so
talking
much.
about this with me today. That was great. It was fun. And yeah, anything you need, I'm here.
Okay.
Happy to help out whenever you want. You
Appreciate it
ever
so
need
much.
a piece of content written about it,
Okay.
I spent
Um,
even though I was on more the business side, my editors got me writing, and I became an AP style guide expert. So I'm happy to
you
bang
don't
out
even
some
have to
words.
worry about that. It's more about, I always worry about, like, if you can put content in there, we'll worry about your AP style and all that
I
stuff,
know. Our our
So,
cycle word editors were so anal
oh,
about,
oh God.
it was ridiculous.
Yeah, there are the grammar Nazis out there
Yeah.
that are all like AP style, and every book has their own. We do, like, I've been on a bunch of magazines over the
Hmm.
years, mostly all B2B,
Yep.
and we all have every book has its own little style takes that are just different from AP. We
Yeah.
we veer a little bit here and there, but the overall underarching support is AP style,
Yeah.
So as long as you do 90, eh, you're not way off in the boondock. I would say just be consistent with what you do, and
Yeah.
if you're going to do it that way, do it for a
Yeah.
reason.
No, you guys do a great job. You do a great job.
Yeah.
I read your content. It's wonderful. There's some websites out there though that ugh,
Oh
just
yeah. I know. Yeah. But there anymore, it's like you can, I read everything out there. Sometimes they're really poorly written, but sometimes the content will, like, all right, I got to find somewhere else to cite this from, but this is good to know,
yeah,
you
yeah,
know.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, all right, man.
Well,
Well, I'll let you go, but hey,
okay.
great talking to you.
Yeah,
So,
thanks again.
have a great afternoon.
You too.
Yep.
See you, Brandon.
If you like this podcast, please like, share, and subscribe. We also invite you to connect with us on powersportsbusiness.com.